Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. American pastor Saeed Abedini was freed, along with 3 other Americans. Washington Post correspondent Jason Rezain, former Marine Amir Hekmati, and Nasratollah Khosravi Roodsari from an Iranian prison last Saturday, January 16th, after being held illegally for 3.5 years. The media is calling this a prisoner's swap. But these Americans were not held so much as prisoners, they were held as bargaining chips by Iran. And President Obama made no mention of them at all in recent public speeches. I just wonder what excuse he has, if any, for allowing these American citizens to be illegally detained for such a long time. Perhaps he has no decent excuse. And perhaps that's why he's avoided mentioning them at all. America sure has changed. From the Washington Post, Iran had 10 U.S. sailors in custody last week, but released them on Wednesday, January 13th. The Iranian military took control of two U.S. Navy vessels and their crew last Tuesday, January 12th, after the boats apparently strayed into Iran's territorial waters. The small command boats had been en route from Kuwait to Bahrain in the Persian Gulf. The Iranian military took the boats and their crews to its naval base at Farsi Island in the northern Persian Gulf. And from Bloomberg, even though Iran released the 10 U.S. military personnel it took custody of, the incident shows that despite a nuclear agreement with the West, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps is willing to board U.S. vessels, take American soldiers into custody, and confiscate the crew's communications and GPS equipment. The Iranian state press reported the sailors had been arrested for snooping, and it took several hours before the captured sailors were allowed to make contact with their superiors. Former U.S. Ambassador to Iraq Jim Jeffrey, now at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, said the Iranians know the Obama administration is committed to preserving the Iran deal above all else, and they're using that knowledge to get away with mischief. Then, from Al Arabiya, Iran's Revolutionary Guards said that Tehran has asked the U.S. for an apology for violating Iran's territorial waters. The Revolutionary Guards are sending a message to the U.S. that Iran is willing to clash with it, and at the same time telling the Gulf states not to mess with Iran. Iran is getting awfully cocky, my friends. Now, I hope you've noticed an improvement in the lighting on me in this video, my friends. Last weekend, I completely revamped the lighting setup in my video studio, and I think I've made a very satisfactory improvement. It was not an easy task. This video production thing has been quite a challenge for me over the past 6 years, but the most difficult thing for me has been learning how to get the lighting to work with my green screen. You may recall times where my color was a bit messy. People were commenting and saying they thought I had jaundice, but it was only the lighting. And even last week, I received a lengthy letter from someone with all kinds of medical advice. They thought my liver was in bad shape because they said the palms of my hands were yellow. Does that look yellow? My palms are not yellow. Again, it was just me trying to do things with the lighting and failing. Finally, I had a serious talk with Elohim about it and spent a couple of hours rearranging everything between me, the green screen, and the camera. And I think with his help, I finally got it right. Hallelujah. Also, last week I asked you to let me know if you wanted me to do a video about cigarette smoking and how to quit in a very enjoyable and successful way. And I have to tell you, I was amazed at the response you gave me. I think some 99% of all the comments under last week's newscast were all about the smoking video. Please, yes, do it. And you'll be happy to know that the video is indeed finished and will be posted here on my channel tomorrow morning after 8 a.m. Eastern Time. It's an hour long and 6 minutes, and it's in 5 parts. It was a ton of work. I mean, I was at it from, the time I got up till the time I went to bed for days since seeing you last year on this channel. Spent many hours, my friends, putting this together for you. And honestly, if anybody wants to quit smoking cigarettes, after watching this video, they will truly have no excuse. None. They will be able to smoke real tobacco blends, but without ingesting any chemical additives of any kind and without ingesting any carcinogens. No kidding. Tomorrow morning, I'll see you here. Now, turning to wars and rumors of wars, on Tuesday, January 12th, from Reuters, Turkish tanks and artillery bombarded ISIS positions in Syria and Iraq, killing almost 200 of its fighters in retaliation for a suicide bombing in Istanbul by an Islamic State suicide bomber who entered Turkey as a Syrian refugee and blew himself up among groups of tourists in Istanbul, killing 10 Germans. Then from the Associated Press, ISIS is claiming responsibility for the Baghdad mall attack that killed 18 people last Monday. Gunmen stormed into the Johara Mall after setting off a car bomb and launching a suicide attack at its entrance. Iraqi officials say the attack, which lasted over an hour, killed at least 18 people and wounded 50 in the city's mainly Shiite east. Then on Wednesday, January 13th, from Ynet News, the Israel Air Force attacked a Palestinian terror cell in northern Gaza as they were planting explosives on the border fence to set off near an IDF patrol. The Palestinians reported 1 killed and 3 wounded. On Saturday, January 16th, from the news journal Search, ISIS has kidnapped at least 400 civilians, including women and children, and has slaughtered 300 people in attacks on Syria's eastern city of Deir ez-Zor. Turning to our Intifada update, from Haaretz, 4 months into the current wave of Palestinian terror, the Israeli Defense Forces is changing its operational deployment in the West Bank and returning to positions it had abandoned in previous years. A permanent garrison has returned to the Shdema outpost near Beit Sahur in the Bethlehem region, which was abandoned in 2006. The IDF also confirmed that it plans to build several new pillbox guard posts in the Nablus region. The Army is continuing its policy, begun 2 months ago, of putting military checkpoints at the entrances and exits of Palestinian towns from which large numbers of assailants have come. On Tuesday, January 12th, from the Times of Israel, a Palestinian man rushed at an IDF patrol brandishing a knife near the Beit Anun junction in the Hebron area. The soldiers opened fire and killed the attacker. On Thursday, January 14th, from the Jerusalem Post, another Palestinian terrorist attempted to stab a soldier at the Beit Anun junction near Hebron in the West Bank. He was shot and killed by Israeli security forces. Then 36-year-old Haitham Mahmoud Yassin threw an object at a military jeep near Nablus in the West Bank. Soldiers stopped the Jeep and got out of the vehicle to investigate when Yassin approached them and stabbed an officer. One of the soldiers then shot and killed Yassin. On Sunday, January 17th, from the Jerusalem Post, a Palestinian terrorist entered the home of 38-year-old Daphne Meir and stabbed her to death in front of her teenage daughter. The daughter, Renana, fled upstairs with two of her younger siblings during the attack. Meir died after struggling with the terrorist, acting to protect her children. Daphne Meir was a mother of 6 who worked as a nurse in the Department of Neurosurgery at Soroka University Medical Center in Beersheba. The terrorist who stabbed her fled when he could not remove the knife from her body. Then on Monday, January 18th, from the Times of Israel, in the second attack against Israeli women in the West Bank in 2 days, a 15-year-old Palestinian boy stabbed a pregnant woman in her 30s in Tekoa, moderately injuring her. He was shot outside the second-hand clothing warehouse in the community. And now to review last week's news. Iran's Revolutionary Guards are sending a message to the U.S. that Iran is willing to clash with it, and at the same time telling the Gulf states not to mess with Iran. Turkish tanks and artillery bombarded ISIS positions in Syria and Iraq. ISIS is claiming responsibility for the Baghdad mall attack that killed 18 people last Monday. The Israeli Air Force attacked a Palestinian terror cell in northern Gaza. ISIS kidnapped at least 400 civilians, including women and children, and slaughtered 300 people in Syria. The Israeli Defense Forces is changing its operational deployment in the West Bank. There were 3 Palestinian knife attacks on soldiers. All 3 attackers were killed. One Palestinian knife attacker murdered the mother of 6, Daphne Meir. The attacker fled the scene and escaped capture. And a 15-year-old Palestinian terrorist stabbed a pregnant woman in her 30s, moderately injuring her. The young attacker was shot and killed. And that, my friends, is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath the naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.